On behalf of IASTA, I welcome all who have joined us for attending 24th lecture of IASTA monthly online lecture series. I am Manish Joshi, Secretary, Indian Aerosol Science and Technology Association. This association was formed in 1988 and it conducts conferences, schools and lectures, and by doing so, it promotes exchange of knowledge pertaining to aerosol science and its applications. The current executive committee, which serves under the leadership of Professor Tripathi from IIT Kanpur, has initiated a monthly lecture series which is called as IASTA Online Lecture Series. This is 24th lecture in this series, and we will be hearing Dr. Suresh Babu S from VSSC ISRO today. He is a renowned name in aerosol research, particularly remote sensing applications, which is also a crucial part of ISRO's satellite missions. Before we move to the lecture, time to remind you for 14th Asian Aerosol Conference, which will be taking place in Mumbai between 1st to 4th December. I am requesting all of you to visit our conference website for more details and submit your abstract before the deadline of 15th August. Now, coming back to today's lecture, which focuses on aerosol characteristics over South Asian region, I first invite Dr. Neeraj Rastogi, Vice President IASTA, and who is also coordinating this lecture series, to tell you more about the distinguished speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Joshi. So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Neeraj Rastogi, and it is indeed my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Suresh Babu, who is a highly renowned face in aerosol community. I know him from our PhD days when we used to attend many workshop conferences, etc. together. He is my dear friend and colleague since last 25 years. Dr. Suresh Babu received his PhD degree in physics in 2005 from the University of Kerala, based on his research carried out at the Space Physics Laboratory, which is in Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, ISRO. Currently, he is working as a scientist G in ISRO. He's a quite senior person, and heading the aerosol trace gases and radiative forcing branch of SPL at Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, Thiruvananthapuram. His area of interest is space and atmospheric physics. He has a very decorated CV, which was made by his hard work. He has multiple awards and honors, to name a few. He received INSA Young Scientist Award, NASA Scopus Young Scientist Award, and a very prestigious Santi Swarup Bhatnagar Award. He also received Swarna Jayanti Fellowship. He is a fellow of Indian Academy of Sciences. He has authored many papers, more than 200 peer-reviewed publications in internationally reputed journals, and edited several books. And the total citation, if we count, it is more than 11,000 with H index of 56. So you can imagine his stature. With these few words, I invite Dr. Suresh Babu to deliver his today's lecture on satellite remote sensing of aerosols over South Asia. Dr. Suresh Babu.
Thank you, Neeraj, for very kind words and introduction. So it's a pleasure to accept his invitation to give a talk in this IASTA talk series. And I will share my screen first. Yeah, hope it is visible now.
Yes, it is. Kindly make it full screen.
Yeah, I think it's full screen now.
Fine.
Yeah. So the topic which we discussed and selected is satellite remote sensing of aerosols over South Asia. Have a discussion on the remote sensing of aerosols from space. Though we have conducted several experimental campaigns over South Asian region, many of the IASTA members were part of many of those experiments, and many of them were independently and as group conducted. But we all know that when we do ground-based observations of aerosols, the footprint of the observations, it's always an issue, because what is the impact? The large area, how far it will, the aerosol characteristics or the aerosol impacts can have a significant effect. That requires the support of space-based observations. So that's precisely the reason we thought that it is good to discuss on the satellite remote sensing of aerosol, especially over our region, the South Asian region. So before going into the details of this remote sensing of aerosols over South Asia, we all know that when it comes to the satellite remote sensing of aerosols, we always think about, of course, passive and active remote sensing. In the passive remote sensing, we know that most of our remote sensing efforts from space is based on the northern looking, particularly above the pixel is the northern looking satellite observations. And there are other methods like occultation as well as limb viewing. But here, when we talk more about the tropospheric aerosols, the northern looking observations are more important. And another more important one, in which gained substantial attention in recent time, is the active remote sensing from space, basically the spaceborne lidar. So that also has contributed significantly, especially on the understanding of aerosols on a regional scale, especially over South Asian region. So in this context, when we talk about the satellite remote sensing of aerosol, we all know that the satellite, what it measures from the top of the atmosphere is the top of the atmospheric reflectance, which is the sum of the contribution from the reflectance from aerosols, reflectance from our Rayleigh atmosphere, and reflectance from the surface. This understanding we all have. And if you look at it's a very simple way of getting the aerosol information from space. If you look at that, subtracting the Rayleigh as well as the surface component of the reflectance, it gives very simple way. It looks very simple to get aerosol information, but however, when we do the remote sensing of aerosols from space, it is quite clear that it is not that simple as the equation says, because from space, when we see when we look at the measured radiance, as I mentioned some time back, it contains the Rayleigh component, the surface reflected component, as well as the aerosol component. We know that the surface over land region is highly varied, the surface reflectance. So a single reflectance value cannot give accurate information of the surface. So to delineate surface from the total reflectance measured at the top of the atmosphere is not at all easy. Second thing is actually most of the in the remote sensing, the technique, the northern viewing, we have a lookup table approach. So here, the aerosol model used to generate the accuracy of the model, which is used in the generation of the top of the atmospheric radiance for the lookup table approach, is very important, because the accuracy of aerosol model decides the accuracy of the retrieved aerosol parameters like aerosol optical depth and so on. So in this process, these ground-based observations are equally important to arrive at aerosol models. And once we have good aerosol models for a different region, retrieving aerosol from aerosol optical depth from space, especially at different wavelengths, it can be done accurately. So there are several efforts in the past, and those observations were mostly accurate over ocean. But over land, even today, accurate measurements of aerosols, especially aerosol optical depth from space, is still in its initial stages. There are several methods are proposed, several experimental demonstrations are happening, but there is a long way to go to get accurate information over land. But over ocean, we have fairly good observation. This is the case of passive remote sensing. When it is active remote sensing, we have very good information from using Calypso kind of spaceborne lidar. But there we know that it's a another looking satellite. The active remote sensing, the major issue is actually the global coverage. But it can give a three-dimensional distribution of aerosols. Now, I move to the next slide. Here, I have shown the one global picture of aerosol optical depth, which is generated using MODIS, which is the most, in fact, successful satellite flown for the study of different atmospheric and surface parameters, but exclusively so much of study has carried out by different groups across the world on aerosols, because it has the capability to provide spectral information on the aerosols. So this particular image, if we see, it is published in a reviews of geophysics somewhere in 2016 by a group where I was also part of this group. So one thing, it is quite clear that aerosols are quite significant over the region where the monsoon is quite active. So aerosol has the potential to affect the regional climate, but the information, how far it can affect, it could those informations could come into means which we could get detailed information only after the satellite era. Though we had observations in the past at isolated locations, the satellite observation of aerosols only made a significant progress in our understanding of aerosols on regional climate. So that is the importance of the satellite remote sensing of aerosols, especially when it comes to South Asian region. The different groups in India has contributed in a big way. Now, in this context, I would like to share one information that one of the satellite which we our Indian satellite, which is having the capability to provide very good accurate aerosol information, is the OceanSat-3, the OCM sensor on board, ocean color monitor on board the OceanSat, and the recent one is OceanSat-3. This is an attempt which we have made in our lab to retrieve aerosol optical depth from using OceanSat, and based on the the approach which I have mentioned some time back, using the radiative transfer calculations, incorporating the multiple scattering effects. Here, the aerosol optical depth at 555 nanometer is retrieved for different scenes. And we compared it with the ground-based observation, which you always feel that one of the best way to compare the accuracy is to have using the sun photometer measurements. And we found that it has good capability to provide accurate aerosol optical depth. So, as I mentioned before, MODIS is one of the most most used satellite product, aerosol optical depth from MODIS. We tried to make a comparison with that, and which also provided fairly good comparison. And this is one satellite over the oceanic region which can provide very good data. We all know that MODIS is now almost completed 25 years, and this OceanSat can be a good replacement, especially over the oceanic region, to get information. And I request all of you to look into this data while retrieving aerosol parameters over the oceanic region. Now, coming to the one important understanding which we had from combining different satellite like MODIS as well as the space-bound LiDAR Calypso over the South Asian region is its three-dimensional distribution. This I used to highlight at many places, that when we look at the aerosols over the region, especially the South Asian region, the three-dimensional distribution is very important, especially when we look in the whole and when we look at the annual cycle. When it comes to the winter months, we all know that we all have a lot of discussion over this region, this part of the region, that there is significant amount of aerosols in the near surface, especially the atmospheric boundary layer. All the surface observations, surface-based observation shows very high values during this winter months. But we see that during the pre-monsoon or the monsoon, the summer months, when we have intense solar radiation availability over the subcontinent, the near surface values reduces. However, if you look at the three-dimensional view of, as I have shown here, the three-dimensional view of the aerosol, we can see that the aerosols are getting transported to higher altitude. And this is actually a composite picture based on several years of observations. And we can see that how it changes seasonally from winter to pre-monsoon to monsoon, as well as in the post-monsoon season, which is probably one of the best way to describe the season over this part of the region. We can see that during pre-monsoon as well as the summer monsoon periods time, significant amount of aerosols at a higher altitude, especially about 2 kilometers and above. So looking at this, we try to get, because what I have shown before is actually the integrated backscattering coefficient. So we always look for the extinction to get into the radiative transfer calculation. So For the extinction from LiDAR, we all know, those who work in LiDAR, whether it is from space or from ground, one important parameter is required for LiDAR inversion is the LiDAR ratio. So, this is a seasonally varying as well as regionally varying parameter. So here what we have done is actually using a network of observatories which is operated over this region by ISRO under the ISRO's Geosphere Biosphere program. We call the network as ARPANET, which is because it formed a part of a ISRO GVP project called Aerosol Radiative Forcing over India. We have continuous observation of aerosol optical depth over different regions of Indian subcontinent. And so we, using the aerosol optical depth measured over this region at a different region like peninsular India or the northwest India and Indo-Gangetic Plain as well as eastern India, combining with the satellite profiles, the extinction profile, the backscatter profiles, we iteratively derived the LiDAR ratio for each season as well as each region and use that LiDAR ratio to derive the extinction profiles for the different regions, studying over peninsular India, eastern India, northwest India, as well as Indo-Gangetic Plain. We can see that it, seasonally varying, the aerosol extinction profile over different regions. From December to May, if you look at as the season progress, we can see that aerosols are getting pumped to the higher altitude during pre-monsoon time. So to get a regional feature, we looked at the meridional structure of this aerosols over the Indian subcontinent by combining the extinction profiles, averaging over the Indian subcontinent, the longitude over the Indian subcontinent. We can see that more aerosols are getting pumped over to higher altitude during spring and summer. So get how far it is getting transported to higher altitude. We took difference between the spring and winter. We can see that during spring time and even in summer, if you take the difference, we get similar picture. You can see that the aerosols, we have an umbrella of kind of an umbrella of aerosols over the Indian subcontinent. So the aerosols which were resides in this the atmospheric boundary layer is it's vertically transported upwards. We have a thick aerosol layer of around 2 kilometers in wide above the Indian subcontinent. So this is basically based on the active remote sensing using the LiDAR. So we were curious to know the type of aerosols because the remote sensing using LiDAR, though we get extinction, it is important to get what is the type of aerosol, whether it is scattering in nature or whether it is an absorbing nature. Why it is important is somewhere in 2016, 2006, we all have seen this. I'm sure that many of you might have seen this paper by Lau on the elevated heat pump hypothesis. What it says is the aerosol-induced anomalous upper tropospheric warming, especially in Himalayan foothills and Tibetan plateau, has the capability to affect Asian monsoon rainfall. So there were a lot of debate, different school of thinking is on this aspect, but this particular layer of aerosol, which is in a way has connection to this elevated heat pump hypothesis, but we need to confirm what is the type of aerosol. So we have conducted some aircraft, though it is not part of remote sensing, satellite remote sensing. We conducted a series of airborne measurements through this layer during winter when the layer was not existed and the springtime when the layer is quite significant. And we found that this aerosol is more of absorbing in nature. So this was the kind of observations and the setup we had. But one most important information which we got is on the non-sphericity, the shape of the particles. So the aerosols which we have collected onboard aircraft, we have subjected to SEM analysis. We found that a significant fraction of the aerosols were non-spherical in nature because this induced a lot of issues, debates in aerosol scientific community, which is mostly dealing with optical properties of aerosols, because most of our optical estimations, basically using mean scattering theory, based on the assumption that the aerosols are mostly spherical in nature. But these observations, which is an eye-opener for us, that a large fraction of aerosols are non-spherical in nature, which of course can be addressed using the now with the T-matrix method developed by Mission Go. when it comes to the optical properties. But this challenge and difficulty was become a is a sometimes it's like a helpful handle for polarization measurements using LiDAR. Because we know that when you have two polarization state measurements from space or from ground, we can estimate depolarization ratio. Basically, it gives an information on the relative dominance of non-spherical particles. When the non-spherical particle presence is significant, the depolarization ratio will be high, because this can be done only using if you have two polarization. If you have the capability to record two polarization state, and Calypso had that capability. So this becomes very useful to delineate the dust aerosols from the total aerosols. So we have made an attempt to do this over the Indian region. And during winter months, if you look at the left graph, you can see that the dust optical depth is almost nil. It's very small in number, the values. But if you look at the March-April month, when the northwesterly is quite active, you can see that large amount of dust is getting transported to the Indian subcontinent. So, though the aerosol science community in India is well aware of this, this process during Northwest India, many of the surface-based observation, at least some of the surface-based observations, showed such indications in the past. But using the spaceborne observation, we can get the aerial extent, the spatial extent of such a, the dust transport. And especially the Calypso combined with the MODIS as well as the ground-based observations can give the accurate information of the dust optical depth. So this is very useful for radiative transfer calculation for delineating the contribution of dust in the overall radiative effects of aerosols over this region. And the non-sphericity of the aerosols, the capability to derive mineral dust aerosols using the non-sphericity is the basic, supporting factor in delineating the dust optical depth over this region. The advantage of Calypso is actually it is not only giving the integrated value, it can give at the layer by layer, which will help us to delineate at which altitude level these aerosols are, mainly getting transported through which altitude region. So here I have shown the integrated backscatter, then depolarization ratio, the change in depolarization ratio during pre-monsoon, as well as the change in dust optical depth. We can see that the mostly dust, optical depth presence even up to 5 kilometers. So it's actually in all altitudes this happens. So this become very useful in delineating the vertical profile of dust as well as total optical depth over our region, basically over the different regions like peninsular India or East India, Northwest India, and IGP. We can see during both winter as well as pre-monsoon. Winter, we get a very classical picture of well-mixed region enhancement, and then decreasing gradually, exponentially with height. But during pre-monsoon, the structure changes. We get layer of aerosols, a thick layer of aerosols at a higher altitude. So using this, what we have done is at some of the locations, we know that we have the measurements of the sun photometer measurements with the Almukantar capability, basically based on the CML observations. These observations are helpful for delineating the total, the single scattering albedo of the columnar single scattering albedo of the aerosols. So using that, we have made an attempt to delineate, the carbonaceous part. But here the basic assumption is the absorbing aerosol optical depth is mainly contributed by dust as well as carbonaceous aerosol. We know that the dust over the Asian region, it is more absorbing in nature. So using that assumption, based on this methodology, we estimated, because we have now the information on the absorbing aerosol optical depth, using, based on single scattering albedo, we can estimate. Then we have the dust aerosol optical depth. So by taking the difference between these two, we can estimate the carbonaceous aerosol. So the advantage is, once we have the handle on carbonaceous aerosol and dust optical depth, dust aerosol optical depth, we can, in a way, we can have a speciated assumption, speciated estimation of radiative effects. So when we do so this was a good attempt to estimate the speciated aerosol radiative effect, and we can see that how much the aerosol, carbonaceous aerosols and dust aerosols contribute to the top of the atmosphere as well as atmospheric absorption, top of the atmospheric radiative forcing as well as the atmospheric absorption. The clear change during the winter and pre-monsoon. The pre-monsoon, the dust play a major role in the radiative effects of aerosols, and the total aerosol effects also is high during pre-monsoon, because the most of the surface-based observations, which won't reflect, which will not give accurate information of the high elevated layers. Most of the studies are focused mostly on winter months, especially if you look at the Indian region. But using these combined spaceborne LiDAR Calypso observations with the ground-based aerosol optical depth measurement as well as MODIS, this study, which is published in Remote Sensing of Environment in 2021, brought out the importance of elevated layers of aerosols, especially during pre-monsoon time, in controlling the aerosol radiative forcing over this region, and which has the potential to influence our regional climate, even like the monsoon onset and monsoon circulation. But of course, there are different thinking in that, but our observation has a very positive trend towards that. Now, having talked about the importance of carbonaceous aerosols, we always think that whether the black carbon or the carbonaceous aerosols can be retrieved from space. So this is a paper published in Aerosol in Atmospheric Chemistry and Physics in 2023 by Gogoi and a group, Gogoi et al. So what this has done is here, using this GOSAT data which is available, which has the multi-angle capability, we have tried to retrieve the aerosol black carbon over the Indian subcontinent. And since we have a ground-based network of black carbon, we tried to assess the quality of the retrieval. And we found that the quality of observation, especially during well-mixed region, well-mixed period, the black carbon concentration, which we have retrieved using the method which is outlined in the Atmospheric Chemistry and Physics paper in 2023, it gives fairly good, accurate, fairly good observations. When we look at the regional features, we cannot get the accuracy as good as in surface-based measurements. But when we look at the region with a slope of about 0.8, close to 0.8, we feel that it is a good thing. So this is one new approach, which based on a collaborative effort with a JAXA group, we have done this study. So this is one area which we, the aerosol science community in our part of the region, can look forward to, that the speciated aerosol estimation from space. So one method using active remote sensing, I have mentioned some time back on the retrieval of dust. Now using the passive remote sensing, it can be done using the aerosol black carbon or the absorbing species from space, because this is basically based on it's time to remember Yoram Kaufman, the paper he has written in 1987 on the aerosol absorption estimation from space. So this method was an extension of that particular method, refined by Hashimoto and Nakajima from Japan, and then we joined them to retrieve it over Indian subcontinent, which give good information about the black carbon and its regional features. Now, when we talk about the regional studies in South Asian region, one of the important aspect is the Himalayan aerosols over the Himalayan region, because we all know that the critical single scattering albedo, that means the aerosols which has the warming potential, the warming capability will be active when the aerosol single scattering albedo is above a critical value, which is a surface dependent parameter. So if you look at the single scattering albedo over different surface, when for highly reflecting surface, when the single scattering albedo, if it is above 0.9 or 0.99 also, it can have warming, because that value is called critical single scattering albedo. It will be very high over reflecting surfaces like Himalayas. So over oceanic region, if you look at the critical single scattering albedo can be as low as around 0.85 or close to 0.9. But when it comes to polar region or highly reflecting regions like Himalayan glaciers, a very small amount of absorbing aerosol can have a significant warming effect. So this is this become very important after a classic work by Warren and Wiscombe, which is published in Journal of Atmospheric Science in 1980, where they have done simulations using the effect of soot in snow. But later we found that dust also has equally, not as good as absorbing as soot, but it has a significant absorbing capability when there is large amount of iron, especially present in the dust. So in this context, we have made an attempt to look at the dust over Himalayas. So I focus more on the remote sensing aspect in this talk. Here, if you look at the vertical distribution of, means the altitude distribution of aerosols from using the spaceborne LiDAR Calypso over different parts of the Himalayas, like Western Himalayas, Mid Himalayas, and Eastern Himalayas, you can see that during the springtime, significant amount of aerosols are present, dust aerosols are present over the Himalayas. So since we have the vertical profile, this helps us in giving, how much is the amount of dust deposited on the Himalayas. The dry deposition flux estimation can be carried out. So we have made an attempt to estimate that and find out how much is the albedo change which it can cause because of the dust deposition. And we found that there is a significant amount, of significant change of albedo can be made. There are several simulation studies we have done subsequently. Since that it's not part of this talk, I'm not going to talk about that. But what I want to highlight here is to have a regional features of aerosol or dust deposition flux over Himalayan region. The spaceborne LiDAR observations are very useful. Though now Calypso is not active, so this calls for the requirement of the spaceborne LiDAR measurements in polar orbiting satellites to derive such things and to get the long-term changes. This shows the capability of such data in deriving the dust over Himalayas. Now, coming to the over oceanic region, aerosol over basically the oceanic region adjacent to the Indian subcontinent. When we talk about the South Asian region, the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean is more important. This is a climatological picture derived using the MODIS data. We can see that very consistent feature during both winter as well as pre-monsoon time. During winter, we know that the winds are mainly northeasterly. From this, aerosols are getting transported from the subcontinent to the oceanic region. However, if you look at the pre-monsoon time, there is a shift in the wind pattern from its northeasterly changes to northwesterly. So during that time, there is significant amount of dust is getting added, which is more of natural in nature to the aerosol system over South Asia. And we can see that how it enhanced and its importance. So basically, the satellite observation actually helped to understand the regional features, because otherwise, most of the observations before satellite era thinks that aerosols over our region is more important during the dry winter months. And most of the studies, if you look at the literature, is mostly focused on the wintertime aerosols. But when it comes to the satellite observations, and if we carefully look at the satellite data, we can see that when we look at the regional impact of aerosols, the pre-monsoon aerosol system is more important, even more important than the winter months. And we know that we have two outflows. One is the outflow in Arabian Sea, and we can see another outflow in Bay of Bengal. Though in different season, these outflows are basically from different type of transport. And if you look at its altitude distribution, you can see that during winter it is mostly confined to the lower altitude, like what we have seen in over the subcontinent. But during pre-monsoon time, the aerosols are getting transported to the higher altitude, even over oceanic region, where convection is not as strong as, because the vertical convection is not as strong during pre-monsoon time compared to the land. So we try to see at the long time a climatological picture. This is during winter and pre-monsoon time, both the optical depth, spatial distribution, as well as the fraction of dust optical depth to the fraction of dust to the total. You can see that the large amount of aerosol getting transported to the Arabian Sea during the pre-monsoon time. The importance is this dust, because subsequent to that, we have done carried out some studies to see what is the effect on the oceanic region, especially the ocean productivity. We have seen that the recent time, there are several reports by our colleagues across India about the dust transport to the Indian subcontinent. There are several reports which says that there is a decline in the transported dust. If you see the long-term pattern, there is a decline in the dust transport to the Indian subcontinent. So in this context, when we look at the dust deposition flux, also this will be reflected. And subsequently, when we look at the ocean productivity, we found that this reduction in dust transport and the dust deposition flux over the Arabian Sea especially has a negative effect. Means the change in dust deposition flux or the reduction in dust deposition flux, in fact, reducing the ocean productivity, because this is also very important assessment when it comes to the ocean biogeochemistry is concerned, because this kind of larger study, larger space-based observations will be very supportive to get good regional features. And this is quite significant over Central Arabian Sea. In this context, we should remember there was a classic work by Goodwin Yu in the past. It is not related to the South Asia, which is actually dealing with the fertilizing role of African dust in the Amazon rainforest. This is basically they could do with the help of Calypso. So what I basically would like to highlight here is actually the capability of space-based observation, especially the three-dimensional capability by combining multi-satellite. We will be able to look at the ocean productivity as well as the other ecosystems also. So basically, like Amazon, we can even look at the productivity in Western Ghats and so on. This thing. So for these kind of observations, the space-based, especially the satellite-based observations, are necessary. This is a very good work to be followed. Means those who are interested can go through this paper. Now, because of the lack of time, I will go to the other part. So we focused on the South Asian outflow quite a bit, though there were several studies talking about the direct effect of South Asian outflow over this region. But we try to look at the long-term variation of the South Asian outflow. Basically, the trend in aerosol optical depth over the South Asian region, both in the Southeastern Arabian Sea as well as the Northern Bay of Bengal. And the trend, as all of you know, that it shows an increasing trend. So because the spaceborne LiDAR is available during this period, we could see the trend at different altitude. Then we found to our surprise is that the trend is quite significant at a higher altitude compared to the lower altitude over the oceanic region. So it is equally important when we have surface-based over the oceanic region, the extending it over the entire column is always an issue, because when the elevated layers are quite significant, you can see that the properties with the long-term variability shows very significant increasing trend at a higher altitude compared to the lower altitude. And if you look at the airborne measurement, we can see that the layer can be totally different also. With the lower heights, the anthropogenic influence can be high. But as we go to the higher altitude, it need not be as high as what we have seen. So these are some of the challenges in the three-dimensional analysis of aerosol. So when we look at aerosol in a holistic way over a region, we need to have a three-dimensional view where along with surface-based observation, we need to have satellite-based observations using the active remote sensing spaceborne LiDAR and as well as airborne measurements to get an accurate picture. So this is one message which I would like to highlight here. So using this aerosol, significant amount of aerosols at a higher altitude, naturally we think that it can have an influence on the cloud formation, basically the indirect effect of aerosols. So here, in a work which we have published in 2021, we try to look at the cloud effective radius retrieved, of course, from using the MODIS. Of course, there are some challenges in retrieving that in presence of cloud, the simultaneously aerosol optical depth as well as cloud. But in certain pixels, it can be retrieved under certain assumptions. So using that, we try to get the connect cloud effective radius with the aerosol index. Then we can see that the normally what we think is that when there is large amount of aerosol present in the atmosphere and when aerosol concentration increases, the cloud effective radius reduces, which we all know the classical Tommy effect, because the water vapor get distributed to a large number of aerosols present in the atmosphere. But when we segregate the liquid water, content in the atmosphere to the different levels, the LWP, if you segregate based on LWP, we could see that above a particular LWP value, the Tommy effect is of course active. As the aerosol increases, cloud effective radius increases. But below a certain value, in this case it is around 75, we can see that above when the aerosol concentration increases, the cloud effective radius, instead of reducing, it's started increasing on a larger scale. So we tried to look at it in a little detail, and we found that there is something like anti-Tommy effect, because instead of Tommy effect, we have seen an anti-Tommy effect when the liquid water content is below 75. When there is large amount of water vapor, it gets distributed to all the aerosols. So we try to look at the radiative effects of that, and we found that for low LWP clouds, because of the anti-Tommy effect, instead of we always see a cooling effect in cloud radiative forcing, which changes to heating or the warming. So when we try to understand it in more details, what is our inference from this? The intense competition of moisture, when the LWP is very small, the intense competition now for moisture by the enhanced presence of anthropogenic aerosol can be one of the probable mechanisms for this anti-Tommy effect. So this shows that the spaceborne observation we can use in the indirect effect. And now there are several studies which is now followed by this. We have seen several studies are getting published in this particular area also. And a lot more studies are now, I hope, waiting also in this thing. So now I will conclude here. So basically, in summary, I try to explain here into this community based the aerosol, satellite remote sensing of aerosols attempts made over South Asian region using basically the MODIS, the OCM onboard OceanSat-3, and as well as Calypso, and the different effects. One is how we can have a regional effect, then how we can delineate the dust, how we can delineate carbonaceous aerosols, and how we can look at different effects, ocean biogeochemistry, impact on Himalayas, and the effect on oceanic region, especially the indirect effect. And these are, in summary, what I try to convey. I hope through this, platform, though it is without a face-to-face interaction, it may be very difficult to get a feedback and talk. But I tried my level best to explain in a general way. I know it was more or less like a popular lecture, but I'm open to you for any questions on this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Suresh Babu. It was really very interesting and very informative talk. I'm sure there will be multiple questions. And to handle that, I would request Dr. Abhijit Chatterjee from Bose Institute to handle the question and answer session. Abhijit.
Yeah, thanks, Neeraj. So thank you, Suresh. That's a wonderful and as most engaging talk we have. So it's very useful, full of useful information, especially for the students who are pursuing PhD. So yes, we expected some more questions, but I think you have probably broken down all the complexities into too much understandable pieces that most of the confusions got clear. Well, one question from young Lian, maybe from the PhD student, that how is single scattering albedo for dust is computed? So that was probably his question.
Yeah, the dust single scattering albedo is based on laboratory measurements in this particular study, which was used based on the because once we have the refractive index value, we can, using the mean-scattering theory, we can calculate dust optical depth. So in this particular work, we have used the single scattering albedo from the using the Mie estimations.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So another one from Dhananjay. It's from my interest too. That how can remote sensing technology be used for air quality monitoring and management?
Yeah, that's thank you, Dhananjay, for rightly putting that question. Now there are several attempts globally as well as especially in our region to derive the particulate matter from space. And one of the main challenge which I have mentioned here is the elevated layers of aerosols. When we use the columnar measurements and converting it into noise level pollution, especially the air quality, when we make it is something like a noise level pollution. There is the big challenge is the layer which is residing above the bound layer. During the well-mixed region, it can give somewhat accurate observation. But otherwise, using columnar AOD and using the surface-based measurements and arriving at some empirical relation and estimating air quality, it's a large challenge. However, using space-bound LiDAR observations, we can have a boundary layer optical depth, and which is very useful, which can be used to convert, to the air quality monitoring and air quality management. So the nose level pollution, there are challenges, but that challenges can be addressed by a three-dimensional understanding of aerosols, where we need to have both LiDAR as well as another viewing satellite together operational. So MODIS and Calypso together could answer these complexities to an extent, but unfortunately now we don't have Calypso. But this calls for the need for a satellite which is similar to Calypso in near future. Though EarthCare is there, I think the data will be available to the scientific community and which will help to solve this issue. So there is a good hope, Dhananjay, to address this issue.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Another one was, I think that's most fundamental questions, that how can we distinguish dust optical depth and aerosol optical depth?
Yeah, I have explained it. It was using dust depolarization ratio. That itself is a talk. I can probably talk on another day. But we also published, and several others also published on how to derive dust optical depth using depolarization ratio from spacebound LiDAR. But using the passive remote sensing also from MODIS, using the spectral measurements, there were, the fine mode aerosols were derived, and using the fine mode and coarse mode, there were attempts in past, even now, to derive dust, and it gives output to a certain level of accuracy. I can't say that it is highly accurate, but when we look at regional features, that is sufficient. So the spectral measurement also can be used to derive optical depth, but there the assumption is dust is large in size. But here in the spacebound LiDAR observation, the advantage is it look at the microphysical property like depolarization capability, because the non-spherical aerosols have the capability to have a differential polarization, and using that we can derive using the depolarization factor, which is more accurate compared to the size-based information, the spectral information. So that is my say. But the methodology is we have explained in the paper which we have published. You may look into that, or you can write to me. I can explain to you.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, Abhijit. If somebody want to ask directly one-to-one, please allow them to. I think Professor Devara is. I think.
Yes. Good evening.
Professor Devara, please go ahead.
Good evening to everybody. It is a wonderful talk by Dr. Suresh Babu. And in fact, he talked many properties of aerosols, particularly regarding the Earth-atmosphere radiation balance. Of course, most of the things he explained very beautiful way, but some of the things what people are looking for nowadays are slightly different from this type of information. That is, somebody, Dhananjay or somebody raised about the particulate matter. Actually, aerosols were now being treated as particulate matter. Of course, it is a subset. There is no difference between particulate matter community and then aerosol community. So now I have two, because of time factor, I have two pertinent questions. I hope Dr. Suresh Babu will be able to explain to me. One is uh, satellites, of course, because of its multi-dimensional and large coverage, it has its own importance. But the thing is, it gives many parameters through the basic parameter of radiance. But so far, the health parameters I'm more concerned about. After knowing more and more about aerosols, their main concern or impact is on human health. So why satellites have not yet given the product of health? So what could be the reason, Dr. Suresh? If you know, of course, there are now people are working, including us, the new era of satellites like Maya. So Maya Amod, we are trying to get health parameters from satellites. But of course, other than that, if Dr. Suresh knows anything about the health parameter retrievals from satellites, that is one thing, because this is one of the pertinent question nowadays. And then another very latest information what people are looking for is the mitigation problems. See, I'm talking some entirely different way from whatever Dr. Suresh Babu talked about for the last 1 hour. See, these are optical, microphysical, chemical, and radiative properties. Of course, I know they have wealth of information about this, but these are all the new questions. Uh, we talk about after knowing all these peculiarities of aerosols. Now people started developing the mitigation, abatement techniques, how to reduce this harmful aerosols in the atmosphere so that the health of the persons can be improved. So in that process, many devices, mitigation devices have been developed by many people, but not many people that started. But the thing is, what I very recently feel that mitigation methods at one place, if you start developing, it increases the scattering part of aerosols at some other place. Of course, this is quite understood. If you know very well about the absorption and then scattering, these are the only two facial properties of aerosols. Either they are absorbing aerosols or scattering type of aerosols. Okay, so how to eliminate this problem? Mitigation processes at one region induces to scattering, more scattering at other places, because now the purpose of mitigation process is not that much beneficial. So how to deal this type of situations? Of course, these are all novel and then challenging problems and recent problems. So after knowing that, of course, depolarization ratio, of course, we also did using LiDARs, depolarization
Uh,
ratio and all. But these things I wanted to know from Dr. Suresh. The presently how actually the mitigation and then health parameters retrievals from satellites. Is there any
Thank you, Professor Deva. Thank you. So Dr. Suresh would be able to answer. There are two issues: satellite-based health product and the mitigations issues. Dr. Suresh, are you there?
It seems it's got disconnected. Am I looking correctly? Huh?
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, he's calling me. Just let you see.
Just
Hello.
please find out. I think he must be having some ideas.
So he's telling that there is some power problem.
Okay,
So
no,
he's
no
joining
problem, no
back. He's
problem.
joining back.
Okay,
He'll be joining back in a few seconds. Yeah.
okay, no problem. I think he must be having definitely some ideas in this
Oh, of
latest
course, he's
queries.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, I
Neeraj,
know.
but I don't know whether Dr. Suresh has listened to it.
No, not yet. I mean, he's online with me on phone. Yeah. Are you trying to? Is it showing you connected? Because we are not able to see you yet. Achha.
Because we all combinedly working
Yeah.
for a long time on aerosols. Yeah, no
So
problem.
as I said, there was
Other
some power failure there. So
yeah,
he's
yeah.
connecting back. in few seconds.
Okay.
Once there is a power disruption, the net connection and everything, it takes a bit
Other,
time.
if somebody is having any other questions, then we can discuss them.
Yeah, let the speaker come then. Yeah. But meanwhile, anybody has any other question, you can type, and we will see that how much time he has. And I will request him to answer as much as he can. So you can keep typing the questions in the chat box. If you want to interact directly, that also you can do. This will be coming back and you can ask directly also.
Yeah, I think we have many more questions to address. So let him come.
So let him join back and then.
Yeah, but one more thing I wanted to compliment Dr. Suresh about the layer, aerosol layer. He also witnessed and then talked about around a 2 kilometer height. There is always 2 to 3 kilometers actually, that band, height band. So always there is an aerosol layer. But when we talked about the surface observations, this layer information is always missing. That's where I always emphasize vertical distributions are very, very important because they are not known yet. So that is another, of course, he rightly pointed out the importance of vertical distributions, but of course, that's to be implemented. That aspect has to, then only I feel this aerosol can be understood in all dimensions. Otherwise, surface level, it gives some sort of information. We all also been doing surface level observations for a long time. And then at the same time, vertical distributions are also highly important to understand the complete nature of aerosol, whether it is dust or marine or urban or rural, whatever it is type. That's what I feel. Of course, chemistry and then microphysics, another debate. Of course, both should be available. So Dr. Neeraj knows very well about the chemical.
Yeah, he's back. Okay, he's back.
Sorry, in between it got disconnected.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. No
So I
problem.
got two questions. One question is on the air quality, basically the health parameter from space. The second question is how the space-based observations are useful for mitigation strategies. These are the two important things. As you have, sir, you have rightly pointed out in the beginning, the aerosol, any parameter measurements using satellite is based on the radiance received at the top of the atmosphere.
Right.
And using multispectral radiance measurements from the top of the atmosphere, we can retrieve different parameters. That is what we were doing classically, and even now we are doing the same thing. But only thing is we are trying to improve the accuracy, because the previous observation, because as you especially know, the space-based observations of aerosol is started somewhere in 90s, and though it initiated in late 80s, but it picked up in 90s. And then from that time onwards, the space-based observations using NOAA AVHRR and later MODIS, these things started giving data based on the radiance information. And at that time, the priority was actually to understand the climate impact of aerosols. Yeah. And in that perspective, the aerosol optical depth measurement, improving its accuracy, was the first priority. Now, over oceanic region, the space-based aerosol optical depth measurement is better, means it's highly accurate. And over land, there is a significant progress. But when it comes to air quality, what is important is near surface measurement. As you rightly pointed out, for a section of aerosol scientists, air quality and health is very important. But for climate scientists, that is also important. That is, of course, that is another area of work. But when it comes to the health parameter, when it comes to nose level pollution, basically the first 100-meter level aerosol concentration, if you look at the space-based observation, as you know, its contribution to the total optical depth is very small. So deriving the particulate matter concentration from space, it has large uncertainty. See, when we look at the critical value, say when value is 500 microgram per meter cube at a certain regions, it may not be a big issue. Okay, but when it comes to 40-50 microgram per meter cube, in that accuracy where you have to have a significant accuracy, The space-based optical depth measurements, converting it to the air quality will not work. But
no, but
there is
one
a
thing,
method.
Dr. Suresh, actually, you have told many things, of course, due to a constant of time. You skipped many things, that also I know. But
Yeah.
the thing is, will there be any use? Because I wanted to know the youngsters, your ideas for the upcoming now budding,
So that's what
budding
I am
scientists.
coming. Yeah,
So,
that's what
no,
I'm.
either any way we
Yeah.
connect
So
AODs with the surface level PM 2.5 or PM
yeah,
10
that's
or
what.
1,
So
that
for
linkage.
that, actually, for that, he need to have vertical profiles, because when we have boundary layer means boundary layer optical depth, especially the first few meters of optical depth, we will get better handle that the because optical depth to particulate matter conversion is based on empirical relations.
Yeah. Empirical, numerical.
It is only empirical
Yeah.
relation.
Professor Devera, maybe we can talk later in
Okay. No problem,
because
because
we
he
are
is one
running
of the,
late
he
because
he
of
is
some
one of the,
technical issues. Yeah.
yeah.
So, and
No
some
problem,
more
no problem. I
questions
will,
When it
we
comes
will.
to
there
Okay.
from the
mitigation,
students.
when it comes to mitigation, we need to have good handle on the source process. Now, space-based observation is very helpful because we have seen that the fire count measurements using satellite observation combined with the aerosol observation is able to give the source information, which is very useful for mitigation. So the mitigation space-based observation, this is one example. Second thing is actually most of the now there is the new thing is actually the hotspot identification. The best way to identify hotspots is space-based observation.
Thank you very much for your nice
we
lecture.
have
But of
many
course,
students also.
I will write to you.
Yeah, so we got some interesting questions from Vaibhav also. So there is a long question, but if I rephrase it properly, it would sound like how to normalize meteorological impact while we study aerosol cloud interactions. So that's the main essence of the questions.
Yeah, that's what essentially when we tried to look at the segregate into different what means liquid water content, because it's a challenge actually, because it is a coupled problem, and we need to segregate into different liquid water content, and then when we looked at the indirect effect only, we could delineate what we have shown here from space. The delineation of meteorological thing, we have to segregate the data into different meteorological group and try to assess it. When we look at the entire thing on a seasonal basis, it will be difficult.
Okay. So one fundamental questions from Gaurav Mohapatra, I think that, that can be addressed by Dr. Suresh, that can you explain the impact of reduction of transport of dust to Indian subcontinent in detail? So it's not the time, you don't have the time to explain something in detail, but just you can shed some light for him. Yeah.
This is what I told there, that the reduction in dust optical depth to Indian subcontinent is reported by several investigators. But one important impact which we have seen is actually its impact on the ocean productivity. When we look at the NPP estimate from the MODIS as well as model estimations based on the MODIS data, MODIS chlorophyll data, and we try to look at the variations with the dust optical depth long-term variability, it shows close correlation. That means the reduction in dust optical depth transport to the oceanic region around Indian subcontinent is affecting the ocean productivity. This is what actually the capability of the space-based observation demonstrated in the past, because how the African dust is feeding the Amazon forest. Okay, so this is what one area which we can look at in the Indian subcontinent is the Indian ecosystem. Basically, for example, the Western Ghats, how the dust transport during the pre-monsoon is affecting. Of course, it is a multidisciplinary approach. We need to take the support of the ecological scientists also. And if we provide the dust transport input to those models, we will be able to come out with a similar impact over Indian subcontinent also. So it can be very well addressed using the space-based observations. Yeah.
So Dr. Suresh, just in the same context, I am just curious to know that how can the dust transport can impact, make an impact on the, primary productivity of the oceans, because normally the NPP depends on the availability of nutrients and the water salinity and stratification. Are you actually using the dust as a nutrient or something?
The mineral, exactly. The mineral dust contribute to the nutrient supply. So this is what, so in that study, we try to look at the different aspects, especially as you mentioned, the nitrates, in the upwelling also can contribute. So we try to look at the association with the different, different components of the ocean productivity. And we found that the long-term variation in dust transport is more closely associated with the ocean productivity compared to the other factors. And from that, we got an indication. Because when we do, a station-based or surface-based or a campaign-based observations, we never get an idea about that a long, larger area or long-term observations. So basically, I try to highlight that the space-based observations utility in understanding when there is a long-term change. Because of the, I didn't go into the details. If you look at the, recently you might have come across the literature on the greening of West Asia as well as greening of our deserts, many of, including our Rajasthan. If you look at the long-term NDVI, we can see that there is a greening pattern and there is increased rainfall in West Asian region because of the global change. And it is increasing the, which is reducing the dust transport, because for the dust to get, evolved, the source region to have the less greening and more exposed to wind, so it is affecting, and and hence there is a reduction, and then naturally we look for how it will affect our regional. And one important thing is actually ocean productivity, and there it has an association. If you look at that, a one-to-one correspondence on a long-term basis only we can get. Suppose within a season, if you look at, I don't think you will get it, but in the long term, this cannot be ignored when we look at the ocean productivity. This is what the message which I would like to highlight. Your concern is correct, because it is a complex process where there are multi-parameter. It's a multi-parameter issue. But if you look at the long-term changes in dust transport from West Asia to the Arabian Sea, there is a reduction, and that reduction is in a way affecting the ocean productivity. So the biogeochemistry, those who are interested can look into that aspect also. That's what the
Well, we got another questions from Babu. Okay, what are the impact of aerosols on the thermodynamic structure of the lower troposphere, such as stability? Well, fundamental questions.
That's a very interesting question, which we have spent quite a lot of time here. Though my focus was on the space-based observation on South Asian aerosols, I didn't touch on that. We have done several studies, in fact, using the high altitude balloon, as well as combining with our space-based, satellite observation, combining with the airborne measurements, extensive aircraft measurements, which we have carried out. We found that very strong association on the thermodynamics. We found that if you look at the vertical profile of aerosols, especially the absorbing aerosols, we can see distinct layers of aerosols in the troposphere, especially between 2 to 5 or even up to 8 kilometers. We can see that distinct layers. When we looked at the temperature profiles in the same platform, we can see that wherever there is strong absorbing layers, it is affecting the temperature profile. So using radiative transfer calculation, we have estimated and published papers, not only from our group, now other groups also. I can see that there are publications in that line, that wherever there is significant absorption of radiation in that layer, it affects the temperature. And we try to correlate, we theoretically estimate the temperature change and try to associate it with the observed temperature. We found that it is closely agreed. It has the capability to affect the stability for sure. And that is actually one of our finding probably 10 years back. As Devraj rightly pointed out, aerosol science from climate effect to microphysics to it changed to more of air quality, but we are still in climate, area of work. Mandate is mostly in the climate science. But this is a very important question in the climate point of view. It is now well established because the aerosols has the capability to affect the thermodynamics of the lower atmosphere. Not thermodynamics, the temperature profile of the lower atmosphere. Whether it is thermodynamically affects the, that is actually the next level question. Of course, we need to look into.
Okay. So I think we have many questions that Dr. Suresh had addressed. So,
but he has time.
Yeah. So we have any time left? I think it's right. So,
Dr. Suresh, yeah. Dr. Suresh, would you like to take one or two more questions, or we can stop now?
We can discuss, not a problem. Yes.
Students, if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand and directly interact with the speaker. So we don't find.
Meanwhile, I have a query, not a question, just a query.
Yes, please.
So, Dr. Suresh, you were showing vertical profiles of South Asian region, and vertical profiles also. You have shown many vertical profiles, and every time you are going up to 5.5 or 6 kilometers, not beyond. So, is there any particular reason which you have selected that height only?
No, it's only the scale. The scale in which we, because from the spaceborne lidar we can go up to even stratosphere also. The entire profile, but when it put it in a single scale, troposphere as well as the upper atmosphere, it comes to very low value. So there is an order of magnitude change in the aerosols above 6 kilometers. Though its presence is there, but when we put it in the same scale, it's very small. But if you take above 6 kilometers in a different scale, because its optical depth will be below 0.1 or sometimes 0.01 in that range. So that is why. In spaceborne lidar observation, there is no restriction. Of course, in high altitude balloon, we had restriction because of in situ measurement, but never it's an issue in the spaceborne lidar. In fact, the accuracy also is high at a higher altitude.
And Dr. Suresh, you had nicely explained that the Tome and anti-Tome effect, categorizing the total liquid water content into different beans, right?
Yeah.
So when you like 75 to 100 was the current kind of threshold value.
Threshold. It may vary depending on the type of aerosol.
Right.
We need to.
So when you are observing these changes of whether it is Tome or anti-Tome based on the liquid water bean, how the type of aerosols are being normalized?
Unfortunately, as you all know, that when we look at from space, the type of aerosol is an issue. The luxury of having aerosol chemistry at the surface level, unfortunately, we don't have it at higher altitude. And probably that is the next, spin-off which we expect and we are supposed to do in aerosol research from space, that the aerosol composition from space, and its altitude profile. And the present methodology cannot make a big change. Unless we get that handle, we will not be able to tell. And when it comes to LiDAR kind of things, that co-located measurements are not possible. So
would that be a good effort if we couple aerosol angstrom?
Exactly, yeah. If you do aircraft measurements in those regions and collect cloud samples and something like a large scale campaign mode observation over the region is required, which requires multi-institutional efforts, which of course we did such things in the past, but now we all are islands of experts rather than.
Understood.
Yeah, let us plan something together. Yeah.
Okay, so let's thank Dr. Suresh for this wonderful and engaging talk. And so we would like to thank the entire BRC team. And yes, Neeraj, you want to say something?
Okay.
Yes, please.
Now the last part of the this session is the vote of thanks.
I would like to mention that I tried to focus only on one aspect of aerosol study, basically the spaceborne observation of South Asian aerosols, because in our discussion, Neeraj shared with me that try to attract more students to this area, where I feel that I want to attract more students to this particular area. of research, which is of course ignored in a larger perspective in the Indian subcontinent, especially the retrieval of aerosols from spaceborne, because most of the studies are based on the products. Even I have shown some of the things based on the products available also. But along with that, the a fundamental level, basically retrieval from the radiance level, it is to be carried out by the students especially, as well as all of us. So then only we will be able to make big changes in this field. So in the upcoming satellites, both from Indian side as well as from international side, there is a thrust on aerosols and other atmospheric composition measurements. Many things are in pipeline and many things are coming up. So there is a bright future. So we need to have a lot of theoretical understanding, especially the radiative transfer computation, which is at present missing in the field. So that is the message which I want to convey to the students community, basically. Basically from the basic, from the size distribution to the optical properties, and then to the radiative transfer estimations, and the inversions, which we need to put a lot of efforts. Then only we can make big change in the spaceborne observations of aerosols. So another very focused talk we will try sometime. Thing. This was it was a popular lecture. Yeah.
Yeah. So sure, we will try to arrange some other time, another talk. So now the last part of this session is the vote of thanks. So for that, first of all, I wish to thank Dr. Suresh Babu, who accepted my request in spite of having busy schedule. Means he accepted my request. He gave us too much of time. So thank you very much, Dr. Suresh Babu. And then most importantly, the audience. Now from the conversation, we understood that we are trying to get the people so that they can tell more and more to the students or young researchers what to take up, try to understand things at better level, and then take from there. So thank you for joining us. We will keep trying to bring more and more speaker for you, and you keep coming and try to interact and get as much as you can. I would also like to thank Dr. Abhijit Chatterjee for accepting my request to handle this question answer session. Lastly, I would like to thank the BRC team, who is the behind the scene doing all the job. So thank you. And with this, we can end this channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to all.
Thank
Thank you.
to the